Hi, I'm Emma. Welcome back to Four Corners Youth Corner Jeunesse podcast. Today I'm joined by
Maxime and Joakim, pronouns she, her.
And
I'm Joe, pronouns he, him.
Perfect. And inevitably we're going to get questions about it, I'm sure, because you guys do look alike, but you are siblings, correct?
We don't really look alike.
We found him in a dumpster one time and we just put on glasses so that it kind of looks similar.
Maybe that's it. Maybe it's the glasses. So today we're going to be having a pretty casual conversation, basically as three youth members of the Laurentians, youth residents of the Laurentians, just talking about kind of all of what life is like as a youth in the Laurentians right now, especially with how the world is these days, for better or for worse. So I guess the first thing I'll talk about, or that I'll ask you guys, I'll ask both of you, is what you do for work, what you do in your free time. So Max, if you want to go first.
Oh, well, it's a very long story. Actually, no, well, I work for Four Corners.
Okay, yeah.
So,
and what part of Four Corners do you work in?
I'm a little bit everywhere. I work with early childhood and neurodiversity.
Right.
And I'm a little bit spread everywhere.
Perfect.
So
and you're a little bit of our spokesperson too, because you have shown up in
I'm a little bit famous or whatever, my big break has started becoming an actress. But that's what I do for a living.
Very cool. And Joe?
I don't work.
Okay.
So I go to school. I'm currently doing an undergraduate degree in electrical engineering at Concordia University.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, and what year are you in?
Right now I'm in my first year.
Okay.
I'm finishing my second semester.
That's wonderful. Okay, congratulations.
It's very fun.
So both of you are kind of really in the trenches in both cases. So you're in a STEM field and you're in a public work field as well too. So you've kind of covered both spectrums or both sides of the spectrum of work.
It's very two different things. Like one is with social and one is just electrical.
I don't talk much. I just do math problems.
Whereas you have to talk all the time.
Yeah. That's a big problem for me.
So to that end, you're both adults. You've both been living as adults for a little while now. How are you finding life in the Laurentians is different for you now as an adult rather than when you were a kid, and maybe perhaps a little more protected or a little more sheltered? Have there been any big changes in the region that you guys have noticed since for you for starting university and you working with the public?
Oh, good question. Well, Drew, do you want to start?
Oh, damn, the public? I don't know.
Well, I'm in the
I'll
public.
let you start.
Okay, I'll start.
You're more talkative.
Like we said, talk more. For me, original, our lore is that we grew up in British Columbia.
Right. Okay.
So we did our elementary school education there. So all of our childhood's pretty much there.
Really?
But we started high school here, actually, Rosemary High School. And it was very difficult. It's very difficult to blend in at that age and making new friends, certainly when you're starting from zero.
I bet.
So that was a really tough time, and we were just going through losing a parent, and we were kind of there was a big thing that was a big change that was happening. And when you're a teenager, life is hard in all aspects.
Yeah, for sure.
My body's changing. I'm starting to look like this. I don't like the way this is looking, and blah, blah, blah. So there's that. But as for me as an adult, now everything's kind of coming together. I find life is less stressful now as an adult in certain aspects.
Which we're going to cover some of the other aspects afterwards.
There's so many things that stresses me differently now than then.
It's a different kind of stress, I find, at least in my experience. The stress of being older, even if it's for similar things, it affects me differently than it did when I was a youth as well. But I definitely understand what you're talking about. So, because I'm also from British Columbia, but I was born there, but I wasn't raised there. We moved because of economics at the time. This was of course prior to the 2008 recession, but already there were kind of signs of it in certain sectors. We moved back here, my father is completely Anglophone, but he is born and bred in Quebec as well. So he's one of the Quebec Anglophones. My mother was from BC, so they moved out here too when I was less than a year old. So I grew up in Quebec, but I kind of grew up with more of the English culture as well. So I kind of understand what you're saying, but I can't imagine being an adolescent and coming into that. Like,
Yeah,
I was always, even if it was difficult, I was surrounded by it, but it's very,
and the
very
mentality
tricky.
is different
The
too.
mentality is very different.
BC and Quebec, two different kind of people.
Oh, completely.
It's not the same breed. You have different perspectives on life and different ways of like treating others, and I think that's what made it the hardest growing up, is the difference. And Jojo, he experienced a lot of that coming in, and then the stresses. Yeah,
I don't think I did. I think it was all bundled up deep down.
when you came in, you started elementary.
Yeah.
And you were saying how like the kids, they were different.
Oh yeah, they were evil.
Evil.
I've always hated kids, even as a kid. And like they were terrible.
But I guess that it definitely would kind of influence your thought process as well when you come into it and you're immediately experiencing the negative side of things. Did you guys start? So you said Rosemere High for you. So you were immediately in the English system, or
immediately? Yeah,
immediately,
because I did my school in BC, so I was already.
So you were allowed to do it. What about you? Were you in an
Same
English?
thing.
Same thing. Okay.
In fact, I'm significantly worse in French, so if I didn't go English, I would have like failed all my classes.
Really?
Yeah, I swear to God.
Okay. See, I wouldn't have guessed that with either of you, because I guess maybe because I'm biased because I know you through work, but I would never have guessed that. But I don't know, the English system is, I'm glad that you guys were able to get into it, but I always wonder when people tell me about that, what things would have turned out like for them had they gone into the French system instead. Because that's what we're seeing with one of the it's what we're seeing with one of the regional high schools out here too, is that they're now overpopulated. Because of certain laws that require people coming into the province to go to French school rather than English. But as a result, the school is now struggling because they have so many students. And I've met a lot of those students. I've met a lot of those staff. They're wonderful people doing the absolute best that they can for these kids, but they know that it's going to be an uphill battle for a lot of them. So it's just one of so many questions going on with socio-political situations right now. You know, if you're looking at it on a smaller, it's weird to say a smaller scale because it's so pervasive in Quebec culture, you know, the discussion of language and language laws and the culture of language. But when we're looking at everything else that's going on as well too, when we zero it in on that, it does seem very small, but it's going to affect the livelihood of so many kids as well.
I mean, they're in that French section. Like they're like,
exactly.
If you're someone who's coming in from another country or whatever, and you're like, okay, let's go to Quebec, and then you're like, okay, well, I don't understand anything that's happening, and you're starting from zero. It can be really, really stressful, and it's like, I don't even understand what's going on. Like, I couldn't imagine if we did French school.
Yeah. So I have to ask, given both of your names and your family names as well too, was there any French background leading into coming to Quebec?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Our whole family's from Saint-Jean.
like Saint-Jean.
Okay, yeah.
So
Which you may have mentioned to me previously and I forgot. But
I think I did. I think we were talking about it one time. And I'm just like, oh yeah, everyone's coming from there. Like we're just all like from over there. We speak French. Originally the reason why we moved to BC was because my dad was looking for a new job, and he was like, oh, this is the perfect opportunity for my kids to learn English.
Yeah.
So we moved there for like 7 years, and then we moved
So you
back.
definitely learned English.
Yeah, my mom, like, we arrived, it was my first day of kindergarten, and I remember she was just like, okay, bye. And I was like, I didn't know a lick of English. I was just like, oh. It was like a terrible time at the time, but you know.
Yeah. But I mean, when you're so young too, you kind of pick up on things quickly too. I mean, that's the joy of being a child as well, is that you can absorb things so much. I know that my younger sibling, unlike me, went to a Francophone daycare, and he was almost entirely Francophone for like the first 4 years of his life, because what he was hearing day to day was French. only. So he would be speaking French to us often at home. Even though we were an Anglophone family, he would be speaking French at home. And I think that helped me learn the language as well, because I had to figure out what my sibling was
What is
saying.
he saying?
But no, you know, and obviously once he started school, that changed. But I don't know. It's such an interesting topic, and I feel like everybody that I speak to professionally and in just day-to-day life has a story that's completely unique to them, and yet there's always, whether it was French or English or another language entirely that was their first language, if they came into Quebec or they started doing school in Quebec, in either system, they always have certain elements of their story that are the same as everybody else, whether it's struggling to learn English or struggling to learn French.
Everyone's struggling.
Well, and that leads perfectly into the next part of the conversation as well too. How are you guys faring with, like, mental health wise and mentally and emotionally? How are you dealing with the constant onslaught of news that we've been getting? Because you and I have spoken about it a little bit, and you and I just met for the first time today. Yeah. But I feel that everybody is, I don't know if it was the case for you guys. I know that when I was younger, it's not that I didn't pay attention to the news, but I didn't pay attention to the news. It was only really when COVID outbreaks started happening. I think it was the outbreak in Italy when I first started really, really paying attention to the news. And then since then, I've been pretty aware. But what is it for you guys? Like, have you always been very aware of the news cycle? Has it only been a recent thing? And how do you cope with it?
How do I cope with the news?
Well, for me, I only really started paying attention to news once I hit 18. Okay. Because I was like, okay, well, I'm an adult now. I guess I have to vote eventually, so I should pay attention.
And it's good, but it's good that you say that, because I think that is not even, I know that that's a big problem for a lot of people, is that they reach voting age and they realize, oh no, who
am I voting for?
Who am I voting for, and why should I be voting for them? And I think that a lot of people have a certain level of shame about that, about not knowing anything once they get to voting age. But I think being able to say that as well, I think more people need to say that, because I know that that's how it was for me as well. Like it was the I can't remember I think it was the 2018 or 2019 federal elections that were my first elections, because I was 6 months too young for the big 2016 federal elections. And but I remember that was when I was becoming very aware, because of, you know, programs we were doing in school and whatnot. I became very aware of everything in the news, and I just remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, this is so much to take in. This is so much, and it's so overwhelming when you're that age too.
Then you're like, everyone sucks. Like, who am I supposed to vote for? Who am I supposed to vote for? They have all, like, these terrible things, and then there's like, oh, but that guy's a little better. Like, I mean, you're like, at the end of the day, I don't know who to vote for. But I mean,
but that's why, like, you always end up voting for, like, whatever your parents are voting for usually.
Well, at that age. And then they like to vote for whatever makes the most money, or whatever is the makes the most sense
whatever
for them.
Whatever benefits them most.
So it's very, like, you're like, oh, okay.
Which I guess you can't fault somebody for wanting what's best for themselves or best for their families. But, you know, I think that's why there's the very common stipulation to most holiday family gatherings, where it's don't talk politics at the dinner table. The number of times I've been told that, because it's true. There is maybe when you're younger, and like when you first started paying attention to elections and paying attention to voting, especially in Canada as well. The US has their own set of rules. Like I think that's something people forget a lot too, is that their election process is very different from ours. The way that they do their elections, the way that their parties are built, is very, very different. But there is a high level of intensity with our own elections here too, and it can be that's complicated. But you can't fault somebody for wanting what's best for themselves. But when you're that young too, you're completely correct. Like you're taking in what your parents are voting for as well too, and it makes perfect sense because they are still the greatest influence in your life.
Yeah. Jeez.
Which for you and I, it may be a little bit different now because maybe we have a couple of elections under our belts. No,
she still does like everything my mom tells her to.
That is not true.
That's so true, bro.
I'm not gonna say who I voted for because we don't want to get political, but I voted not the same party as my mom.
Which I feel like that, but that in and of itself is a whole thing as well. You know, it's a huge step to suddenly be doing something different than especially if you have a very good relationship with your parents as well,
and I have a good relationship with my mom. We're very close.
Yeah.
We went through a lot of stuff together. So like,
sure.
I mean, you're like, well, listen, I love you. I think you're fantastic.
But you're
not going to vote for this person.
Yeah.
It's not the way it goes.
Yeah, and it's not what you want for yourself at that point. It's not the point that you want to make. You want to do something entirely separate. I know that was... And same thing, like I have a really, really close relationship with both of my parents as well too, and much of my family. But, you know, as I get older, I find myself just having moments of reflection of like, well, that's their reasoning for wanting this, but I'm not in that socioeconomic situation.
Yeah.
My situation is very different, so I have to take that into account too when I'm making choices in life.
Yeah, and for them, they also have that older mentality of you
They're
have to do this.
a little more well versed in it too.
Yeah, and even when like it comes to money, like I'm seeing this very often. They're like, oh, but like people your age, they don't know. Like you have to like save and you have to do that, which I agree. Like you have to save your money and whatnot. But I don't think they put into realization that like, hey, have you realized that the price of houses doubled and the minimum wage and stuff didn't?
Yeah.
Like we are not paid enough to be able to purchase the expenses of life now. And we also want to live. We are not in that mentality of like, oh, I'm just gonna work my whole life and then here comes le retraite and I'm gonna finally start living. We want to start living now while we're alive and we're young, but we also want a home and we also want this and that, and the money doesn't follow.
No,
so
you're right.
I stress all the time about money. I'm always like, oh, this and that, and I want a house, but it's gonna cost this much. And I'm looking at houses, and I'm like, why is this 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, barely any land, barely anything is $500,000, and like situated in like middle nowhere.
No garage.
No garage.
Oh my
nothing.
God. Terrible.
No stationnement. Just it's like the smallest thing ever, and it's just like it's wild. And I'm like, how can we live in this kind of thing? Like,
and
it's tough.
It's weird too. Is that I feel that no matter who we talk to as well, we get a different answer every time. Like there are people in my life who are the same age as me who now have 2 kids, are living in a house that they've put a down payment and they've got a mortgage on. But then by the same token, I have friends who are in the same situation as me where they have no idea what's going on. And they're just trying to get by. And
just trying to feed my cats.
But it's true. And it's, I don't know, it's tricky. I wouldn't say that it's not, maybe it's a different situation for you guys. I don't know. At least for me, I never find that it's necessarily a sensitive topic to discuss amongst my peers and my friends. But everybody, it's not a conversation that can go on for a long time because everybody gets very emotionally exhausted with it after a while.
But I feel like it's easy to talk about people who are experiencing similar things, but then when it comes to talking about it with people who are well off and who are like or older, like it's hard to talk to them. Because they're just like, but I did this and look where I am now. Okay, Jerome, we're not all like super like advanced in life where now we make $150,000 a year. I love my job, but I do not make $150,000 a year. And I mean, that's the thing is that a lot of people have to choose. Do I do what I love or do I choose a profession that gives me a lot of money? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I want to, at the end of the day, still love my job. I want to be able to wake up and be like, oh, I love my job. I'm going to go to work. I'm excited. Instead of waking up and be like, another day
Here we go
in the
again.
trenches. And I gotta go back.
In the trenches.
In the trenches.
Like, I could never, like, I want to keep loving my job so I can work as much as possible. But, like, it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah. Well, and okay, so, and that was a topic that you had wanted to talk about beforehand as well, too. And that as I was reflecting on it, I really realized that was a good one to talk about, because it applies both when you're living, like, as a young professional, and then while you're also living as a student. The idea of individual happiness and, you know, how you make that distinction, whether it's about money or whether it's about job security or whatever the situation is, where do you draw the line between something that's making you really happy and something that's going to let you achieve maybe a certain level of happiness much later down the line? You know, it's that kind of like an economic version of, you know, immediate reward versus delayed reward.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Well, I'm gonna let Joe start with that one, because I think
My reward's delayed.
his reward
Because of school.
his reward is more delayed.
I have to
than
go through 4
mine.
years.
Yeah, because it's true. You're still in your first year.
Yeah. Well, for me, I don't know. I just kind of like think ahead, you know.
What kind of things do you take into account when you're thinking ahead?
I just think about the money, honestly. I'm just like,
That's fair.
I'll have money. I'll be happy, because like right now, the thing I'm most worried about, it's actually money, right? So like same thing. We've been talking about money. This whole thing's been talking about money, but really just like I look at my bank account every day. I'm like, damn, I should stop spending on this. I should stop spending on this. And then it's like suddenly I realize that the whole day I'm just spending my whole day at home, right?
Yeah.
Just studying.
Yeah.
And so there, obviously, like there's no happiness there. Well, unless you like studying. But
even, and I when I was in university as well too, I loved studying. I really, really did. But even those who study for fun, there reaches a point where you have to step away from it. You have to go and do something else.
Stop studying.
Yeah, even if it's just for an evening, you have to take a moment to do something else. But yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up to, you know, as a first year university student. Everybody always, and I think, maybe you experienced it as well, but a lot of people talk about, you know, live the university experience, like go out and party, go out and make friends, go and socialize.
Gosh.
I haven't done that at all.
I
It's
didn't
fake.
either. I didn't
Honestly,
either.
I don't even know where to find it.
Where do you find the parties?
I'm running around. I'm like, where is it?
Where is it? Well, and it's interesting to talk to you as a first year in 2025, well, 2024, 2025, about that, because when I was in university, I started in fall of 2018. So I was pre-pandemic, but halfway through my academic career, the pandemic hit. I graduated. I didn't even go to my graduation.
There was no parties.
There was no parties. There was no
There
parties.
was no gentlemen and gentle ladies.
No.
Everybody was at home.
There was no there was no Roaring 20s situation going on the way that we thought that there would be. But it's interesting to hear that, because even before before the pandemic started, when I was in early university, first and second year, there was a certain level of partying, but I think it really was more different. And I'm sure this still exists to a certain extent, but I think it was more differentiated between the departments and the faculties rather than
for sure.
as a whole. Whereas now, everybody that I talk to who's in first and second year, no matter what faculty they're in, it's kind of the same answer that I'm getting. It's I don't even know where to find it. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't know where to find it.
Looking for the parties.
Where they at?
But then the question is, you know, even if you did find the parties, would you really want to be going?
It's hard to socialize.
It's really hard.
Oh,
After COVID and because of phones and all that stuff, I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, like I don't have a lot of friends, and I struggle because I feel like I really try, but like sometimes I see people on their phone, and I'm like, do I say hi? Are they gonna find me annoying if I'm like, hey, how you doing? Like, what's your name? Blah blah blah. Like, it's so difficult, or people already have cliques. It's harder to enter and be like, hi, my name's Maxime.
Yeah.
Can I be one of your friends? Can
Well,
I
you
go
don't
to
want
the
to
party?
be inserting yourself into somewhere where you're not
Yeah.
welcome, even though most of the time you probably are. That people would probably be more than happy to
Yeah.
welcome you into it. But it's a difference between knowing that and experiencing it, I guess.
I mean, it's really difficult. I don't know about you, because he's been reading books about like how to socialize with people.
How to get better.
how to better socialize, and I don't know if it's been working for you.
No. Like, I understand the theory behind it, but then it's like, okay, now I have to apply it.
Yes.
Which means I have to talk to someone.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, and it's such a good point too, because according to my parents, when I was a little kid, I was super social and outgoing.
Yeah.
But then in high school, I kind of closed in a little bit more, which is normal when you start high school.
Yeah.
Like that's to be expected. But for a multitude of factors, it was pretty defined for me as well. And then right when I hit the point where I was like, oh, I'm ready to go out into the world, the world shut down.
COVID.
And then, but and I think that's both the joy and the detriment of phone access, like unlimited phone access, is that I maintained and made some really integral friendships, adult friendships, over the pandemic, because I was able to be in touch with these people. But then by the same token, on a Thursday night, if I'm sitting at home, if I've sat down at home, I'm there for the night. I'm not
like,
going
it's
out
8
and doing
p.m.
anything.
I'm clocked out.
Last night I was in bed at 7:30. I'm not kidding.
You realize you get older as it's like, oh, it's 6 p.m. I'm getting so tired right now.
Exactly.
And I
was sitting there thinking, like, I should at least be watching a TV show or reading a book or something. But no, I was falling asleep. And it's weird because I don't hate it.
No.
Like I and you and I have talked about this before too, but it's there, there's that experience of, well, based off of everything, I should be doing this.
Yeah.
But I'm really not mad about the fact that I'm doing that.
According to parents, and like, when I was your age, my mom says that all the time. She's like,
oh yeah,
when I was your age, like, I would go out, there was like this dance club thing that was happening for like kids my age, and we would dance every Sunday. We would go out and dance. I'm like, good for you. Get that cardio in, girl. I'm going to stick with my gardening and my whatever I'm doing during the summertime, wintertime. Heck, like, I going out is not as much fun. And I feel like there's like an increase in like, how do I say this, like in good terms? Like, there's an increase in like, you see on the news, like, this person was like attacked, or this person was like this, or this, and this is, and you see a big increase compared to before. Maybe it's just because now they're more public.
Yeah. I think there is an element of that too.
It makes me so, like, I'm scared. Like, I'm like, I don't want to go outside and end up finding someone and getting smacked down. Like,
but no, like, it's true.
You get smacked down like WWE.
Like, I don't want that.
With all this snow, maybe it wouldn't be as painful to land.
Yeah,
but
like,
it's still. I understand what you mean as well too. I don't. Is it similar for you, or is it completely different?
I'm a dude. I'm good. But like,
so it comes into the gender difference as well too.
I genuinely think it is, because like, if I talk to any of my guy friends, like, that's not a worry at all. And then if I talk to my girlfriends, like, yeah.
He has girlfriends. He has a lot of girlfriends. No.
Friends that are girls.
Friends that are girls. All my girlfriends.
Yeah. It's just saying friends that are girls. It's just hard to say.
It is. It's much longer. It's more words.
But I mean, I was talking about it. Actually, I had like this huge discussion with my boyfriend at some time, and we were talking about what was it exactly? I was like, well, I said, if you're walking, it's like 1 a.m. You're walking. You're going home. There's a girl walking behind you. How do you feel? Are you gonna be like, oh my god, she's gonna attack me. I gotta run. I gotta walk faster, or I'm gonna go on the other side of the street. Or you're just gonna be like, meh, whatever. Well, for me, like, I don't know about other people's experiences, but like, even like, if like the guy is like a super chill guy, super nice, whatever, you still get that little feeling of like, you never know.
You never know.
I don't want to risk it. I'm just gonna go on the other side of the street, or like, it's 1 a.m. There's no one around. Like, it's prime time for something unexpected to happen. Yeah. So I mean, and I don't have it against like all males. It's just like it's kind of like that protection part. Yeah. It's like, just to be safe.
Self-preservation instinct.
So it's like, love y'all, gotta stay safe.
But then again, what if that guy's just approaching because he wants to be your friend?
And then then that's the question that always comes up too. And that's you mentioned beforehand too with, are there more of these things happening or are we just hearing about it more because of social media and the internet? And I think that really is, there are two sides to that coin, as there is with most things, because, you know, we're hearing about these sometimes horrible things that happen to people. And, you know, bad news sells. So, of course, we're going to be seeing more of it because, you know, we react more to bad news than we do to good news. By the same token, so many men and boys that I talk to now are so much more aware of that, and not in a big showy way, or trying to make people know that they know about this. It's just, if it happens to come up in conversation, they know more about it now than perhaps previous generations did. And I know
doesn't exactly mean no.
Well, and I know that even in previous generations, you know, the conversations of aggression or violence between genders or towards other races or any kind of bad behavior towards another person, I know that those conversations still happened and there were productive conversations. But again, widespread access to this information means that perhaps more of those conversations are happening, and they're happening maybe at younger ages as well.
Yeah. Well, that's what you can also just hope for, is that they're talking more about this and making people more aware. It's like, you're like, I hope you share this information. We want more people to be aware of this stuff. But yeah, it's very something that's like delicate, but also kind of like, as humans, we want to protect ourselves. And me as a person who loves true crime,
Oh boy.
dang it, I'm ruining my vision of like humans, and I get scared. It's like, humans are scary. Like, it can be your neighbor, it can be family, it can be anyone. Now people are telling you like, don't leave your kids with like even close family. Like, what is happening? Like,
you never know what they'll
everything's turning around. In social media, I don't know how you're like, I'm a user of Instagram, I must say, but like, I don't know about him, but when I go on Instagram and I see like, there's like a video of like a nice kid just like hanging around, and I see like these negative like comments, like, I'm not going to go into what they're saying, but like terrible stuff. And I'm like, these are humans. Yeah. That's someone that's like living amongst us who just like, oh, I'm going to say that. Yeah. That's because they're thinking it. They're like, oh, I'm going to say it. A lot of times they're like, oh, it's just for the memes. It's just to be funny. I would never say that in my whole life. Even if like I was put a truth serum, even if I was like this, like why would you do that? And now that person is looking at it and is scared for their life. They're like, oh,
or for their child's life.
Or their child's life. Like, people just want to share like, oh, I had this cute moment with my kid. Jeez. Yeah. Some people need to be locked up just from the comments. I'm just going to say that's my page, but maybe it's like those people who come, the algorithm or whatever.
No, it's
come for you.
It's definitely true that that there are those factors to take into account, but I think to bring it around, because we're gonna wrap up pretty soon, what I would really, really like to know from you guys, especially with the fact that we've talked about such heavy topics as well too, and things that are definitely on the minds of so many young people of our generation, in the Laurentians, outside the Laurentians, across the Western world, across the whole world. Everybody's dealing with these problems to a certain extent, and I think that it really affects a lot of people, and it all comes down to coping mechanisms. Like, can you cope or can you not? So what I want to ask you guys is, when you're faced with these situations, whether it's the financial stress, whether it's the, that idea of self-preservation when you're out and about in life, whatever the situation is that is kind of weighing on you, is there something that you can do in your day-to-day life that helps you and kind of either calms you down, maybe not helps you forget about it entirely, but just makes things a little bit easier to deal with? Because we started the conversation with how when you're a teenager, everything feels, every bit of stress or anxiety feels crippling, and it's the only thing that you can feel. Whereas the same stressors later in life can still affect you, but they don't affect you in the same way. And I think a lot of that comes down to coping mechanisms. So what are some coping mechanisms that you guys have in brief?
You want me to start?
If you want to start, go ahead. Mine might be more long.
Yeah, I got the short ones. I mean, I make it brief. Well, me, usually I like being alone, and I like to just forget about everything, right? So I'll usually play video games, right? That's the easiest solution. I just play a bunch of games, lets me like completely like throw out whatever happened during the day, like out of my mind. Yeah, that's all I do for coping, honestly.
But that's great because I actually do almost the exact same thing as well, honestly. And if that's what helps you, then that's what helps you. And maybe for some people it's a going out with friends. Other people it's staying by yourself. Whatever it is that helps.
Yeah, but also, although recently I've realized that like it's a very temporary solution. So like even though like sure it lets you forget for a while, but then you stop and then it comes back.
Yeah.
Right, so you're still stuck with whatever's happening or whatever.
So you always
stress
just
is.
you have to always be aware of that, and that you have to be aware that that stress is going to come back later. What about you, Max?
Well, I studied as a TES, so I'm like going back into it.
What can you define TRS for people that might not know?
Technicienne en éducation spécialisée.
Okay, so a special education technician.
Special education technician. And I mean, I think from as young as you can go, start learning how to cope right away.
Yes.
Like people need to learn how to self-soothe. That you have to start with children, self-soothing, and then eventually they find different things. Healthy way of coping, throwing things and whatever is not a healthy way of coping. But for me, like I know I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm stressing. At some point it was sleeping. I was like, when I sleep, I cope. That was not a healthy way of coping either, because at the end of the day, when I wake up, the problem was still there.
Yes.
So what I do now is that I if there's like something happened that I can't control, I tell myself, this happened, I couldn't control it. It is what it is. What you can do now is live with it and learn like to get past that thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's like it happens.
Yeah.
Things happen.
The sun's going to come up tomorrow.
The sun's going to come up. You have another 80 more years to go. Things are going to happen your whole life.
Yeah.
Just do what you love. Realize it's okay. And you're learning. You're always learning your whole life.
Yeah.
You're always learning. At some point, you'll stop learning. I don't know when that is, but it'll happen eventually. But you're always learning for right now. So, take that moment, take that breather, come to realization. It's okay. Do what you love. I love to garden. I love to be with my family. I love to, like Jojo, like late night, I would do a little hour session game of playing games and whatever. And then I go to bed.
That's your life. There you go.
And that's my life.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming and talking about this. We did cover some pretty heavy topics, but I think that there are things that are on the minds of a lot of people of our age group. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your coping mechanisms. And I hope that you're able to employ them continuously through the rest of your lives, and that you continue to always learn.
And they'll change.
They'll
change.
Sure.
They'll grow. They'll be different. But as long as they help you into a better tomorrow, I think that's what matters.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Four Corners Youth Corner podcast Jeunesse. I am Emma, and we will see you next time.